Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to be doing a leather utility pouch. And this is one that I use all the time. It's got the double closure on it, and we are going to use the double closure on our pouch. This one I've had for a long time and have used it for a long time, but I am going to mix it up a little bit on this one that we're going to make, and I'm going to do it two-tone. So I use my utility pouch for shooting. You could use it for anything, camping, hiking, whatever. I keep my cowboy loads in that for each stage, and then I have it right on my gun belt, and then I know I have exactly the number of rounds that I need when I go to that next stage. So very universal though for whatever you want to use it for. It could be used for cowboy shooting, reenactments, again, camping, hiking. You could stick your cell phone in it and hang it off your belt or whatever you want to do with it. But very useful, very handy, fairly easy to make. Again, I'm going to make this one out of two-tone leather. I'm going to use a lighter weight, already finished, like a beige sand color, suede feel on the inside. So that'll be the inside. This will be the outside. I'm going to use some black finished pigskin for the second color, or the accent color. So come on in and let's get started on this project. Let's move the pigskin, the black pigskin, out of the way for a second. I'm going to start with the sand colored material. It looks like I have a pretty square edge right here, so I can use my grid on my cutting board, or self-healing cutting mat, and kind of square that up. Looks like it might not be perfectly square. So let me take a small square and let's go ahead and put a square on this so that we can get a good square edge on this leather. Yeah, it's off just a little bit, especially at that end. So I'm going to take a pencil and just make a very faint light line just so I can see where I'm going to be cutting it. And then do the same this direction, because I want a good square piece of leather to start with. And then I'm going to go on up and follow this line so that I can get two pieces. I believe I'll have to measure and see. I'm going to make it basically the same size as the one I showed you, because I like that size, and like I said, I use that all the time. And then I'm going to extend this line too. Might as well square up this whole piece. So I'll extend that. Then I'll take my other straight edge and I'll cut that with that straight edge. And this has a cork backing, so a lot of times when I'm cutting thinner material, I always flip this over so that the cork's up, so that I get my stainless steel touching the leather, and then I don't get any movement or any waviness when I cut my material. I can get a nice straight line. And again, it's imperative that you have a good sharp knife or knife blade when you're doing this, and that'll help with a nice straight line also. So I'll pull that scrap out of the way. I've got a nice squared up edge now, and let's go ahead and flip it over and do this side that I marked, and that'll give us a square edge on two sides, and we'll have a squared piece of material that we can start with. So go ahead and cut that piece off, get it out of the way. Now we'll take my pouch that I showed you before that I've been using, and I'm going to measure that, and you do sew it inside out and then turn the whole bag inside out. So this is approximately 6 inches, and I want to sew about a 1/4 inch. I want to be able to have my stitches a 1/4 inch in or right at that. So I'm going to make it 6.5 inches long this direction, and side to side it's a little narrower, and this way the bag actually measures 5 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and make it 5.5. So 6.5 by 5.5. If you want to, you could make it where the top is not narrower than the bottom, than the height. You could make it 6.5 by 6.5 if you want. But this looks like it is, yeah, 5.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So that's what I'm going to make it. I like this size. It works great for me. You could make it bigger, you can make it smaller, whatever you want to do on the size. So I am going to come over off of this edge and put my square on there. I'm going to come over 6.5 inches. And then I can turn it and I can do the same thing this way. 6.5 inches, and make a mark. I'm going to double check this mark. It's at 6.5, and then I can go ahead and take my straight edge, put it on my 2 marks, and make my pencil mark. Now, this pencil mark on this material, you could just barely see it. I don't even know if it'll show up in the camera. I can try. It just doesn't really show up on the camera. There it is. It does show up a little bit, but it's very faint. So then we'll flip the stainless steel ruler over. Again, you want to hold this down as tight as possible. You don't want your leather moving on you. And this would be set aside. Here's our 6.5 inch piece right here. Then we want to flip this around and we want to make this 5.5. Again, I use my square, so I make sure I keep this piece square. And this whole piece ends up being just a little shy of 11. So I'm going to go ahead and make it 5.25 instead of 5.5. And then make that 5.25, and then I'll mark it at 10.5. So that'll give me two 5.25 pieces. And the nice thing is, if you make a mistake with this pencil on this material, you can just lick your finger and it'll wipe right off. So there's 5.25, and then 10.5. Take my ruler, my straight edge, and let's go ahead and I want to make sure I'm on the right mark here. 5.25. Let's go ahead and mark that for a cut. And then I'll turn this around. You wouldn't see any of this pencil mark anyway because it's going to be inside out and stitched. And then the same way here. So let's go ahead and take our straight edge, we'll flip it over so we have a nice flat side. And then move it over to the 5.25 mark. We go ahead and cut that. So there's our two 5.25 by 6.5 pieces. One for the front, one for the back. So we've got those two pieces done. Next, what I want to do is take the black pigskin and basically we're going to do, let's say, measure this down, we do a piece that's 2.5 inches from the top down by 5.25 across. So we want it the same width, but only 2.5 inches down from the top. And I want to make sure we get the softer, suedier side on the top. And let's flatten this out the best we can. And again, I'm going to use my pencil and my square because I want to square this edge up. And let's just go ahead and make a square piece, a right angle cut here with our square. And I will need 2 pieces of this too. You could do just one and do it on the front, but I want it on the front and the back. So same as the other leather, I'm going to take my straight edge, I'm going to follow that pencil line that I just drew. If you need to, replace your blade so that you have a good sharp knife. I'm going to go ahead and turn this around, and I'm going to, remember I need 2 pieces 5 1/4, so that's 10 1/2. I'm going to go, my line goes about 11 or 12 inches, so I got plenty of material down here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off so I don't have to deal with all this material over here being in my way, and I'm not going to lose that much excess material. So I'm just going to cut that about an inch or so away from the pencil mark, and that way I can get rid of all this excess material, get it out of my way. Now I can go ahead and cut the other side that I marked that's going to square up my black material. I can throw that in my scrap bin. Now I could go ahead and measure down. Remember, I want 2 pieces that are 5 1/2 or 5 1/4 and 2 1/2 inches. Square up this little edge here. And I did flip my over to the cork side. I need to watch that, be careful, keep it consistent. So now I can go ahead, I know this is square and this is square, so I can take my square, put it on the top side, and I think I want to flip this over so I have my inch marks. There we go. Put my square back on that left-hand side, and remember, I just need 2 1/2 inches, but I might as well square this up, and then I'll have a piece that is square. I could just go ahead and cut this with my square if I want, without marking it, but I prefer to mark it first. It's kind of that measure twice, cut once type of thing for me. But I can go ahead and cut that off. Remove that scrap, and then I don't really need to do anything with this end because I'm going to measure down the 5 1/4 inches. Put my square back on the 2 straight square sides. And I'll go 5 1/4, 10 1/2, and I'm also using my grid on my cutting mat to keep that straight. 5 1/4, 10 1/2. Double check everything before I cut it. 5 1/4, 10 1/2. I can make my line, then cut it, or I can just use my straight edge and cut it. It's whatever you prefer, however you prefer to do it. Sometimes you get into these projects and you do one and it's like, hey, it's much easier for me if I do it this way. So a lot of it just depends on trial and error and what makes it easiest for you. So there's my two pieces that are 5 1/4, the same width as my other material. Now I need to make them 2 1/2 inches this direction, and it'll make a lot more sense once you see it. And I'll put my square on there, go 2 1/2, make a mark, go down to this end, go 2 1/2, make a mark. I might as well mark this one while I'm at it. And I want to make sure that that is 5 1/4. I am cutting it the right way, measuring it the right way. So I want to come over 2 1/2. Same way here, 2 1/2. And then I can go ahead and cut it. Or, like I did before, if you prefer to draw the line and then cut it with a different straight edge, or however you want to do it. So I'm doing it a couple of different ways here. Now I need to make sure I pay attention to what I'm doing. This is my piece that I want to set aside. This is a piece I want to keep. That's my 2 1/2 by 5 1/4. Then I'll go to my other piece. Same thing. This is my scrap. These are my good pieces. I'm going to double check everything. 2 1/2 by 5 1/4. 2 1/2 by 5 1/4. So that worked out great. Now, this is what kind of gives you an idea of what that's going to look like. So this would be the top of the bag. This would be the bottom of the bag. So there's the front. Make sure I get the right side. There's the back. So I've got my two pieces, one for the front and one for the back. Now, I don't want this just to be straight across. To me, that's kind of boring looking. So I want to do something a little different for that. So I want to put this on my grid, on my cutting mat. And I'm going to look through some of my French curves here. I'm going to see if I can come up with something a little interesting. So this is 5 1/4, so I'm going to mark my center, which would be 2 5/8. So I'm just going to put a little tiny pencil mark right there. And then I think I want that to, let's say we go up an inch. So let's go up an inch on each side, make a mark on the edge, and that's going to be my guide mark for my French curve. So I'm going to put my point, the center, on this point that curves down like this. And then this end, on the edge, I'm going to put it on my 1-inch mark. That way when I do the other side, all I do is flip it, and I'll show you that. Let's go ahead and make my pencil mark, and hopefully that'll show up so you can see it. I'll flip my French curve, do the same thing, put the point on that center mark, put this edge, let me move my arm out of the way, this edge over here at 1 inch, and then draw my line. And I don't know if that's going to show up on the camera. Maybe barely, not very well. Those pencil marks are very faint. But you'll see exactly what I got out of that as soon as I cut it. Now, I'm not going to be able to use a straight edge because the line's not perfectly straight. So I'm going to have to follow that line freehand. So I want to be very careful. Come down to a point, remove that excess. Again, slow. Make sure I stay right on that line. You notice I keep moving this hand closer so I got good firm grip on that so it doesn't slip on me. And remove that piece. So now I can show you these side by side. So now I have what looks like this. It comes down to a point in the center instead of just being straight across like this one. So I've got a little bit of curvature, comes down to a point, gives it a much better look in my opinion than just being straight across. So let's take that, lay it on top of our other one, and now we don't have to measure that with the French curve this time. We can just measure it off of the first one that we cut for the front or the back, either one. One's going to be for the front, one's going to be for the back. Still mark those. We will use our French curve to draw the line because I want to make sure it's perfect and it matches the other one perfectly. But as far as marking, measuring and marking, I'm just going to mark it off of my first one. That way I know it's going to match. So I'll line those marks up, make my pencil mark with my French curve. Again, take my knife, follow that pencil mark, remove that, turn it around, do the other side. And there's the second piece. So now instead of having two pieces that are straight across, kind of boring, now I've got a neat little design, front and a back. Alright, so I've got my 4 pieces of leather cut out that I'm going to need. I've got my black pigskin. It's going to go on top. I got the front. Here's the back. That'll look the same. So You turn the, it doesn't matter which side of the bag faces out, they're both going to look the same. So those pieces are ready to go on to the next step of the process, and I am going to be showing in the next video uh, some sewing on my hand crank machine, my hand crank leather stitching machine, and I'll kind of give you an idea where I got it, how much it cost, what you can and can't do with it. So you want to make sure you come check out the next video for that. I won't be hand stitching this. I'll be doing it with my hand crank machine. So thanks for coming along. Thanks for getting started with me on this new project. And as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe. And speaking of subscribing, we hit 500 subscribers. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That was kind of a little goal of mine, to get to 500 subscribers by the first of the year. And thank you very, very much. You guys did it. You guys did it. And I appreciate that. So please come back, check out the next video. And like I always say, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.